Tom, good to see you. Tom asked me why am I wearing sunglasses?
Why are you wearing sunglasses?
Because it's sunny.
In England?
Yeah, it's sunny in England. It's actually about 23 degrees right now. It's sunny in England, can you believe it?
Has that broke like a record?
No, I think we've had warmer weather than 23 degrees in England, but after what feels like 6 months of grey skies, doom and gloom, drizzle and rain.
The traditional,
Fantastic.
The English monsoon.
Yeah, something like that. So it's fantastic to have a little bit of sun. Tell me, what's the temperature right now in Vancouver?
About an hour ago, it was 6 degrees. I'm not sure what it is right now, though.
Oh, are you pleased that you left us then for Canada?
I am. I'm still happy. I should have stayed there if I wanted sunny skies, though, because it's only 10.
Absolutely. I mean, that's chilly. No, not surprising. Got a hoodie on, and I'm wearing a t-shirt and sunglasses.
I don't know if it's that well.
It really is. It really. Honestly, I don't have air conditioning because I live in the UK, but I'm thinking about it.
That would be not a good investment, if you ask me.
I've heard it's going to be like 40 degrees Celsius in summer, so it might be a good idea.
I've heard you've got to take a second mortgage out to be able to pay for it, though.
That was a good point. Anyway, weather aside, Tom, what's new with you? What have you been up to? See anything good lately?
I've watched Baby Reindeer recently. That was pretty good. You seen it?
I have, yes. What did you like about it?
Well, the main thing I liked about it was how it took the stalking elements that's seen in quite a lot of media, and it's made it a bit more grey than what you would normally get. Normally it's presented as quite black and white, but you sort of see the way that he sort of eggs on the stalking as well, and he kind of enjoys the attention that he's getting from it, and I thought that was something that I haven't really seen done in that kind of format before. So I thought that was quite an interesting aspect of it. What did you like about it?
I think that's a breath of fresh air. I totally agree with what you're saying. Usually it's quite formulaic with stalk stuff. It's like this mad crazy stalk somebody, and it just gets worse and worse and worse. And then the person hates it. They go to the police don't believe them. And that's basically the narrative of the story. I agree with you on that. I think what got me more was I just find it hard to understand the incident with his sexuality, meaning, spoiler alert, he's as the story progresses, he starts dating a trans lady, and not just for her. He was actively looking for somebody who was trans. He was on a trans dating website. He was happy with that, and that's great. I don't know if what the program's trying to say, and it's not just a program because this obviously is a real life story. If the incidents what happened to him in his life with relations with the same sex kind of made him question his sexuality and pushed him down that road, or if that was always in him, and it just awoke something in him, and then he just started to try and explore his sexuality a bit more.
I think the point the show was trying to make, though, was that the guy took that choice for him, Darian. He took that away from him. He didn't really have a choice. He was sort of cajoled into it by him and forced upon him.
Do you think... So, are you saying that he was a heterosexual straight man who then developed homosexual feelings due to what happened with him and Darian? Was he called Darian?
Yeah, Darian. Yeah. And what I'm saying is, I think it's irrelevant on whether it was within him anyway, or whether he was convinced to be like that by the guy. I think it's more an emphasis on it wasn't his choice; it was forced upon him anyway. Is what the show is making, because it gives you no indication, or there isn't anything to go off before the incident that he is homosexual. If you know what I mean, he never expresses it in any kind of way before that. But I don't think that is the point. I think the point is that this happened to him, and he's gone down this path because of that incident. So do you think he was homosexual all along or not? I don't have an opinion on it because there's nothing to go off. I'd have to say no.
See, I don't know. That's interesting, and to me, I found that part of the narrative more interesting than the stalker element. Whether his relationship with his sexuality had changed due to trauma and drug-induced trauma, or if he was always that way inclined, and he just finally decided to experiment with that part of his sexuality, because obviously he was watching adult entertainment, wasn't he? And it was of the same sex, and he was enjoying that. But then, is he bi? Is he confused?
But wasn't all that stuff after the incident, though? After the first time he went to Darien?
Yeah, so, it was. Yeah. It was, but I don't know if he was a straight man who then developed homosexual or bi feelings because of that incident, or if he was always that way. I think that he lost a lot of self-worth by what had happened, and it went to the point where he kind of went completely off the rails, and he was sleeping with everyone, and you know, wasn't he? It didn't matter. He was almost purposely trying to degrade himself to try and understand who he was, due to what had happened to him. Through his way of dealing probably with the trauma of what took place with Darien.
Well, he would have been thinking, he's got no respect for me, why should I have any respect for myself, kind of thing.
Yeah, it's quite interesting. I thought it was excellent the way he did, because again, like we spoke about, it was almost like a fresh take on the stalker victim relationship. It also explored trauma in a different way, and how it can manifest, and how it can lead to changes in someone's personality. I don't know if it can lead to changes in someone's sexuality, but it kind of allowed us as the audience to see how things can manifest as they progress due to a traumatic relationship, and I think even more so because it was drug induced.
Yeah,
and that has to have some kind of effect on your relationship with sex. If you're always, not on the same realm as what you should be, you're completely off your rocker.
Oh, definitely. And it's interesting that the guy who perpetrated Darien is presented as quite a safe and stable character who can give what's his name? Donnie. You can give Donnie what he needs in life, which is the leg up in his career, because that, like, all these three elements all are interconnected. Like, he needs to further his career, and it's presented in a way that Darien could help him. And it is like the carrot on a stick. It's always like, oh, the next thing, it'll work out.
But also, what I thought was interesting about that, the way it's portrayed, even that didn't portray Donnie as the total victim, because even though he was being groomed, manipulated, especially with the use of drugs, it showed you on different incidents that he was aware of what Darien was doing to him. He'd wake up and he was being molested, and despite that, he would keep going back for whatever reason. And one of the reasons you could suggest why he kept going back was that he wanted career progression, and he believed this relationship could allow him career progression.
Yeah, even if you look back on the way that Darien speaks, his voice is very slow, very like comforting. It's like he's a voice of authority, isn't he? And like, he doesn't have any kind of stability in his life, and Darien has a nice apartment, a good career, can offer him some security and some progression in his career at a time where like other things in his life aren't going well, like the comedy and stuff, and he's the only person who kind of looks in and says like, I actually believe in you, I think that you can do this. But obviously we know now that wasn't the case. It was more of he wanted to abuse him, so he told him all the right things.
But was it almost, to play devil's advocate, was it almost unspoken transactional relationship where it was obvious what Darien, was he called Darien? I keep forgetting his name.
Darien.
What Darien was getting from the relationship was quite obvious. But was Donnie also benefiting? Was it transactional? If he didn't have this position of power and didn't have this great career, would Donnie keep going back would Donnie even have any interest in him in the first place if it wasn't for his position and his job and his ability to progress Donnie's career?
Yeah, well, exactly. It's more of a grey zone, isn't it, than it being completely black and white. And it's the same as like his career as well. If you notice, his career is never portrayed in like a way where it's all bad or it's all good. Like sometimes he does get a laugh and he has a good show, and then sometimes he doesn't, and it's up and down and up and down. I think that's the overarching theme of the whole show is like that, where it is a bit of a grey zone. It's not like how people would tell you where it's all one person's fault or all the other person's fault. And I think that's what I like. It made me think quite a lot after I watched it.
I think you hit the nail on the head though. I think if it makes you think and question and trying to make sense and rationalise, and there's enough meat on the bone there to form a discussion like what we're having now, to me that's almost a sign of a really good programme. If it's quite formulaic and straightforward and there's not much to discuss because it's just hero saves the day from villain, and the hero's very one-dimensional and the villain's very one-dimensional, then there's not really much to say. But I think the strength in that, and I don't know how it's performing in North America where you are, but over here it's like it's all over the news. They've been on TV shows. Richard Gadd and the lady who plays Martha. It's number 1 on Netflix. Obviously, it's a British show, but I don't know it's performing over there. But over here, it's just like it's the talking point.
I've seen it as I've seen it all over the place on social media, but obviously I've got a lot of British people on there. It's still very orientated towards that country, and I see a lot of it on there. But in terms of like people that I know from around here and like like on our Netflix and stuff, it's not performed as well over here, but it's there. It's on Netflix. I think it is more orientated towards a British audience like that. I haven't spoken to anyone over here that's actually seen it. I've told a few people to watch it, but no one knew what it was when I spoke about it.
It's that I'd say this year, without putting too much time to think about it, I'd say it's the best thing I've seen this year. I've started to watch Fallout.
Oh yeah, I think Fallout's great. I really enjoy Fallout.
I need to get. What have I seen now? I've seen like 2 episodes and I love it. It's different again. Obviously, it's very, very different than Baby Reindeer, but it's fantastic. It's gripping. It's got its own style, its own pace, its own action, and it feels different to other kind of action shows. I know it's based on a game, so a lot of the material's there for you, but I like it because again, it feels a bit fresh. I think a lot of things recently in the superhero action genre, they're quite formulaic and they're copying each other. I understand why, because it's a successful formula.
Yeah, well, one thing that I think Fallout does, which annoys me with a lot of other TV shows and films that do this, where they base things off other mediums, is they don't make a big deal out of certain aspects of the production. So say, for example, like when you first see like the Pip-Boy or something like that, in a lot of medium today where they draw quite a lot of attention to it. And a good example of this would probably be in Star Wars The Force Awakens. You know that scene when you first see Han Solo and him and Chewie come onto the Millennium Falcon, the music drops and it's like, oh, it's a big thing, Han Solo's here and stuff. Whereas I think you shouldn't do that within your own franchise, because then that's acknowledging the media outside of the film, if that makes sense, because Han Solo's a big deal to us, whereas in the film he shouldn't be a big deal just walking in. He should be just another character. I think that's something that Fallout does really well. As someone who's played the games, there's a lot of things in there where you think they could have made a big deal about that, because that's like a big moment, but they just didn't. It was just part of the story, and it made it much more enjoyable to watch because of that.
Never thought about that before, actually, the relationship between the show and audiences, and should you acknowledge the audiences or not. I don't know, I mean, it's kind of geared up to audiences, and it's kind of like that. I think in A Force Awakens especially, they're trying to play in that feel-good moment that we've not seen this character for 1983, I think Return of the Jedi was. And now it's 2017, I think it is. So it's been a meaningful period of time between the two, and it's like, look, he's back, and it's that feel-good factor, and it's trying to acknowledge that feel-good factor. So I do understand why they did it, but yeah, it's a good point, actually. I never thought about that before, about what you should acknowledge or not acknowledge in a film, almost playing to the audience rather than having it as a portrayal of these characters in their lives. And yeah, it's a fair point. Actually, I never thought about that.
Well, a good example of how it's done in a good way, I would say, is you remember Avengers Endgame?
Yeah.
Do you remember the scene where all the holes open up and they come through, all the people who've died, and then it's like quite a big moment where everyone comes back to life and stuff, and like the snap's undone.
So, yeah.
I'd say that's an example of that same thing, but done in the right way. And the reason I'd say that's done in the right way is because it means something to the other characters when everyone's coming back. Now, say for example, we had we were seeing the story from Princess Leia's perspective, and she was on the Millennium Falcon, and then Han Solo walks in. I think you could make that big pomp and circumstance because it means a lot to her that he's come back. But you shouldn't acknowledge it from the audience's point of view, in my opinion, because it does get quite tiring, and it doesn't make good for repeat viewings as well. Because once you've seen it once, the next time it's you know he's coming anyway.
Yeah, it's interesting. I never thought about that before, actually. I completely understand your point. Obviously, in Avengers, it was a big deal that, they've not seen these individuals for like 4 years or whatever it is in the blip, and then finally they're back. So it's almost like, wow, somebody who I loved, who I never thought I'd ever see again, is now back. That's a very powerful thing. And it's still to this day, it may be my favourite superhero film in the last God knows how many years. I thought it was brilliant, and I don't think Marvel has done anything close since. I did like the last Spider-Man. Was it Far From Home or something? Thought that was good. They played on the multiverse element with the other two actors who played Spider-Man, Garfield and Tobey Maguire. But yeah, it just seems to be in a bit of a lull. It's hard to hit them heights. It's almost like a team that's lost a star players when they lost like Robert Downey and Chris Evans and stuff, but they never really had the players to bring in to replace them. Yeah. And it's just like we've got like a depleted squad now, which is the Avengers, and we'll just see how it goes.
I find with a lot of that stuff, it's hard to keep up with it because a lot of them have these massive, lengthy TV shows that you've got to watch to keep up with everything else, and then you've got to be dedicating like weeks of your life to watching all these TV shows and stuff. But when it's a film, it's an easy to digest formula where you can spend some time on a Saturday evening to go and watch it. But with all the TV shows, it's hours and hours and hours of content. But before we move on to that, what I did want to say was, I do think a lot of these moments, like the Han Solo moment and like the moment where Thor gets the hammer and stuff, or all these different moments, I think a lot of them are made for algorithms and for shorts and stuff. They're not made for the actual person who's watching the film, because once you pay for your ticket, you're already there. You know what I mean? So it's all about advertising in shorts and how to get that moment, and people who are watching things on the couch and TikTok will see that moment and they'll share it, if that makes sense. So it's more made for the algorithm and not for the viewer.
What algorithm? Social media algorithms?
Yeah.
So it's almost like they know they'll capture this as a high spot, and then it'll be liked and shared all around Instagram.
Exactly. Rather
TikTok.
Than the actual, you know what I mean? Like, say for example, the moment when Luke throws the lightsaber away. Maybe is that in there for the story, or is that in there to get shit? I mean, that's probably not a good example of that, but you know what I mean. One of those kind of moments. Is that there to be shared, or is that there because the narrative calls for it?
Yeah, I know what you mean. I mean, I think they used to in action films, and it was called Bang for Your Buck, where they wanted so much action in a film, whether it suited the narrative or not, because it was an action film, so they wanted big action scenes, and sometimes they were almost crowbarred into the narrative, and it's like, oh, we've got to get the bad guys now, and then they had like a car chase, and then they were shooting the baddies like in like a Bad Boys or something like that. Then they move on, they'd have a little bit of narrative, the next thing, about another baddie would be free, and they'd be chasing down the baddie, and it'd be there for the whole film was really a vehicle to promote action rather than narrative. So maybe, to your point, as things have progressed and our social media is such a massive part of our culture and life and how we digest media, yeah, it could be that they're almost thinking about what would also look good in a 10-second short on a reel or something, or on a TikTok, as well as what works in the film. Yeah, that's a good point, actually. I never thought of that before.
Well, here's a good example of it. When I shoot wedding films, there's certain shots that I get because I know it'll do well on social media. It's not for the narrative of the wedding film. For example, the confetti shot. I mean, that confetti shot doesn't really it doesn't tell you much about their love story together as them as specific people. It might tell you a bit of like all these people have gathered around them, there's so many family members throwing confetti over them and stuff, but that shot's mainly there for social media because it does well.
Yeah. So you're almost thinking, as you're shooting that shot, you're thinking about socials at that point rather than in the edit. Oh, that's quite a cool shot. That'll work for socials. It's actually it's a proactive thought rather than a reactive thought in post production about what you're going to use for your shorts.
Exactly, and I see a lot of people have been doing this for the past couple of years now. It's really come into its own the past 2 years though in wedding filmmaking, where a lot of photographers and videographers will spend a lot of the day filming, but then when they do have a bit of downtime, the phone's out and they're filming the confetti, they're filming the decor, they're filming the flowers, they're filming all these different things, and they're putting it on stories. And then what they're going to do is they're going to tag the florist and they're going to tag the decor company, the venue, and it's all about promotion and authentic content and trying to get it out there. So as well as you just being someone who makes good wedding films, you've got to be someone who can sell yourself in these different ways, and you can tag these businesses and grow together. If that makes sense. So you're thinking about a lot more than you used to have to think about.
Yeah, you're right, and it's business savvy really, because at the end of the day, this has to, if you, whatever you do within your video production, if you do wedding or documentary, something like that, there has to be an element of what can be monetized, and using different clips, etc. What will drag attention on an algorithm or in people's minds back to you or back to a florist, etc. It's just good business practice, and you do it when you look at Instagram or TikTok or something like that. A lot of the shorts that are there, they don't actually make sense. They don't actually portray anything. It's all about aesthetic and beauty, and just capturing that beautiful shot in the moment, and that's it.
Yeah, exactly. It's all condensed down to people's attention spans, and it's another thing that I've seen as well over the past couple of years is, have you seen those videos where you've got, like, say for example us talking on this podcast now, people won't have the attention span to keep watching it, so what they'll do is they'll put a like a game clip or like a GTA clip below the people speaking to keep people's attention.
Yeah. God, is that not a bad thing though?
That's terrible, but it's because you can't concentrate on anything. People can't, but it makes sense from like a marketing perspective. Yeah,
it does to keep people's attention, and obviously that's why. And you'll see what we're going to do with our podcast, that it will be chopped up and it will be used as shorts as well. Because also as well, some people might be interested in what we've talked about Baby Reindeer, but they might not necessarily be interested in wedding video content or etc. etc. So it works in different ways, but. Yeah, I agree with what you're saying. And on that topic of wedding videography, moving over into equipment, you said something to me what I want to talk to you about, why I've got you right now. And you said to me, well, we spoke about cameras, and you're a Sony shooter, as I am. And I know you've got the A7S III, which is one. Honestly, I think on the professional level, without going crazy and buying something like an Arri or a high-end Red, I think for its pricing point is one of the best cameras out there still today. I think that you can do so much with the S-Log3 profile. I think the low light on it is incredible, and the form factor on it's so small. You can throw it on a gimbal. You can do what you want. It's a great camera. And the A7 IV as well. Again, I was looking at, I don't know how true it was, but I was looking at the statistics of dynamic range, and it was in the top 5, and it was beating cameras like the FX3, FX6, FX9. Most cameras, I think the C70 outperformed it, and then obviously some of your really high end stuff like the Red V Raptor and the Arris, obviously, but they cost considerably more. They're both brilliant cameras, but something that you said to me, what I found interesting, you said, but they don't have cine features.
That's an issue. Mainly time code, I would say, is an issue, because time code just makes things so much easier with syncing and stuff. But I mean, it depends on your audio setup, a lot of it, but my audio setup doesn't really require me to have time code. But there's certain other times where, say you're doing like a run and gun documentary, or you're doing stuff where you can't always be syncing audio and it's not as controlled, then time code's definitely the way to go. And it's also good for audio devices, because like all my audio devices can run time code as well. It's just the 2 cameras that I use don't. But then I do think maybe I could get an FX3, I could get an FX30, I could get all that stuff, but then I'd still keep my A7 IV. That's the problem. The A7 IV doesn't have time code, and I do a lot of photography as well. So it's not really something I can replace unless I wanted to never use it for video.
Yeah, I was going to say but then you're kind of a good camera down, aren't you? Because then you're potentially going to if you want 2 cameras for video and 1 camera for photography, you could do, but then obviously it means selling the A7S III to buy an FX3, which is already more expensive, and then on top of that an FX30, which is obviously the cheaper camera, but still very good for things like time code and other things like that. Really, would you do that though?
No, I wouldn't do that. I don't think it would be worth me selling an A7S III to buy an FX3. I'd have to wait until the next model or something like that. It's just the only things I would be gaining would be the city features, which I probably wouldn't use that often because I'd be using my A7 IV anyway, and it would negate using timecode anyway by using the A7 IV.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think you're right on that. Whereas with majority of my work, obviously being corporate work and documentary, I have the FX6 and I have the FX30. I have the FX30 for 2 reasons. One, it was far more affordable than FX3, and even though it was APS-C or Super 35, a lot of people saw that as a negative, and there is some things that are lesser than the FX3, for example. Doesn't have the same amount of stops and dynamic range, and doesn't have the same low light capabilities because it's a smaller sensor.
Yeah.
But at the same time, there's advantages. You can get more focal length top end because it's cropped in on an APS-C. APS-C lenses are far cheaper than full frame lenses. The camera itself has all exact same features. I mean, at a glance, it looks identical to an FX3.
Yeah.
Not just physically, but features-wise, you can save your LUTs on it. It's got a built-in fan. It's got the audio top handle with your 2 XLR inputs. It matches really, really nicely with the FX6. If I got the FX3, to me, apart from the fact that it goes on a gimbal much nicer than the FX6, it's pretty much, in many ways, especially from an audience perspective, it's the same camera. It's pretty much the same sensor. There's different processors, so there is slight differences between an FX6 and FX3, but it's pretty much the same camera. So to me, it wasn't worth spending that extra money. So, and I don't do photography apart from thumbnails, etc. So I didn't really need the A7 IV, which I have owned, and I do think it's a fantastic camera. But for me, with timecode and all of the features that you've said, and the cine features, I do find it beneficial for what I do.
No, I agree. I think if I didn't do photography, I would. But photography does make up, I'd say, 40% of my business. So I'd be losing 40% of my annual revenue, and it just wouldn't make sense for me to do that. Because over here, a lot of the weddings that I do, this isn't really the case in the UK, but over here they do want you to do video and photo. They want to book it through the same company, which is strange. I don't know why that's not the case in the UK, but in the UK I've never ever had any inquiry ask me to do photo as well. But over here they book me for video and then they ask me to do photography as well, so they can keep it all within the same company. So it's and I found that with commercial projects as well, where they'll ask you to do a few stills and stuff, which is something I didn't really get asked in the UK.
And I think that's the crux of it. I think there's a lot of people out there, that there's YouTubers, there's different people, and they're always competing and comparing cameras. But I think at the end of it all, it's about horses for courses, meaning it's about what suits the job and what suits you and your workflow. Yeah. And for one person, the FX6 could be the right camera, but for another person, it's not, because there's quite a few issues with the FX6. What wouldn't suit somebody, for example, the audio's all on the top handle, doesn't have a mini jack or anything on the body. I mean, I could time code sync it to my Rode Mic Pros, and so I'm syncing the camera to that and just record directly to the actual microphones and do it like that. But that's like a bit of a faffy workaround. Yeah. Where the cameras that you've got, and also the FX3 and FX30 and other manufacturers' cameras, you don't have to do that because it's got the audio built on the body. I still think, and I understand why Sony did it, still today, when you hear people, I think probably the biggest gripe of the FX6 is the fact that there is no decent audio recording method on the body.
Yeah, that's quite frustrating. Where like the A7 IV does have that. I mean, I produced a 3-hour long travel film with just the built-in microphone on the A7 IV, mainly because of space constraints in my bag when we went. And I think it's not like amazing or out of this world, but it does the job. It just does get it done when you need to, and especially more importantly, when you're doing jobs, it's easier to sync audio without having to completely assemble the camera. You can just sync audio straight away with no issue.
Yeah, and I think that's, again, with the FX6, it can record audio. It's scratch audio, and it's there for scratch only, so it's there just for reference points, so it can be.
Oh, it does do
because
that.
It is a cinema camera. Yeah, it does that. It does have a microphone on it, but it's purely there for scratch audio. It's there to be so you can sync it via waveform, but because it is a cinema camera, and the idea is that with a cinema camera, I mean, cinema cameras. Traditionally, you wouldn't have all the features like autofocus. You'd use external audio methods as well. You'd have a focus pull. It's just there to capture the image, really. But obviously, as time's gone by and with competing brands, now, like the FX6, has outstanding autofocus. And then you've got other ones like the C70, what does have audio on the body, the mini XLRs, but it does have that, and it does have autofocus, and it is a cinema camera. So now, as things have gone on, I think we kind of, as our wants and needs and our demands of cinema cameras have changed, and now we actually want a camera that can pretty much do it all. And then in comes the Sony Burano, which is an expensive camera. I couldn't justify spending £25,000 on a camera for what I do, even on the documentary side of things. But it is a camera that, you know, it shoots RAW. It's got IBIS, which is incredible, and it's got variable NDs. It's got audio on the body. So without looking further into the camera and its actual performance and usability, now it seems like there's a cinema camera out there what pretty much does everything.
Can it do photography?
No, because it's a cinema camera though. And cinema cameras, you know, they're not there for photography. That's what a stills camera's for. I don't think it can. No, it shouldn't be able to. Cinema camera. That's an interesting question. Actually, I don't know. I don't think it can. But it's not there for that. With it being a cinema camera, it's there for cinematic.
That's where it's different for my needs. I'm thinking about if I was leaving the house and I needed to go on a trip somewhere, I could only bring one camera with me. What's going to make me the most money? And it would have to be the A7 IV.
Yeah, you're right. It's got better. It's got fantastic video options, and it also takes great photos. I mean, on that token, in the same category, the cameras that you're looking at also going to be more expensive as well. You've got Sony A1, what just people don't seem to talk about that much anymore. You've got a camera that does look really, really nice, which I've looked at myself, which is the Nikon or Nikon, however you pronounce it, the Z8. That looks like a fantastic all-rounder.
Yeah.
Canon R5C, but a lot of people, I don't think that's really took off as well as people would have liked. I don't think it's, I think it might be because of the battery power issues, or the 8K RAW files are ridiculously big to edit from. It's just not seemed to be as popular as talked about as much as some of the other cameras.
I think didn't I want the Canon camera have the overheating issues as well?
That was the R5, and then they brought out, it didn't have a fan on it or anything like that, and you can only shoot, I don't know what it was, I don't know, it was like 20 minutes, 30 minutes at its top end function. It would overheat, and then you'd need to rest it for a good period of time, otherwise it'd just get too hot. So then they brought out the R5C, which is very similar camera, has a lot of similar features in it, but it's chunkier because it's got the built-in fan. But the batteries that come with it just aren't powerful enough to get all the functionality of the camera. So you do need external batteries you need like a V-mount or a base plate Anton Bauer to anything to power it. So it's almost like, yeah, brought this camera, but also it's got a failure from the get-go, which is it doesn't have enough power to power it.
Well, that's just it, isn't it? There's just always an Achilles heel somewhere. There's no perfect camera that does it all for you. It's just your trade-offs and compromises and what you're willing to swap in and out and stuff for.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And you know, what do people call it? Gaslight gear. I don't know, but basically it's people who just all the time they want to buy gear, and I do get that a lot myself, because constantly now, and this isn't a criticism, because it's good that people are bringing awareness to what new tech is out there. We're constantly shown new cameras, or a new audio recording system, or a new gimbal, or something like that. I mean, DJI alone, they brought out the DJI, I think we're up to 4 now. And people are like buying it and they're getting it, and no doubt it is superior to the RS3 Pro or the 2, whatnot, but or even the Ronin S. But the others still do a job, and they are good enough to do your job. You don't have to spend money upgrading all the time to something better, because what you've got is actually good enough. Yeah. And I don't think that message is shouted loud enough.
Well, which gimbal have you got now?
I've got the I've got the RS2, but I've got the RSC2, which is a smaller one as well. And the reason I got that was because the camera that I'd like to put on the gimbal is a small lighter camera. It's, you know, I've had the A7S3 on it, I've had the A7 IV on it, and the FX30 on it, and they're very small light cameras. So for a gimbal setup, I wanted it to be as light as possible. So I got a lighter gimbal, what is still way strong enough to handle the payload of what I was using it for. I didn't feel like I needed a bigger one, and I have no intentions of buying any of the new ones.
What was is that the black one?
Yes, black. Yeah, they're not all black.
No, I've got the one that I've got. I think it's the R3. It's the one with the red and black design on it. I got that, and sorry.
No, the one that you've got is the one after. If you've got the RS3 Pro, it's the one after I've got. I'm on the 2, but it's like I don't feel the need. It's like it's the same with drone. I've still got the Mavic 2 Pro. It shoots 10-bit 422. I think it's the last one that had the tripod feature. It matches up nicely when grade it and manipulate it with Sony footage or whatever camera I'm shooting with. I don't feel the need to upgrade. The other drones undoubtedly are better, but for what I need, I don't need anything more.
See, my thing was I came from the Ronin S. I think the original one, the big like black one, it was quite heavy and stuff, and I went from that to the one that I've got now. And I'll be honest, I was very astonished by how much of an upgrade it was for me going from that big bulky thing to the one that I've got now. Especially with the I like the Bluetooth connectivity, the screen and stuff, that like the way that I can control the camera with it. There's a lot more buttons on it that I can manipulate things with, so I have to keep taking my hands up and stuff. And I think I came from a very old gimbal to that, and then one of the main things I've made quite a bit of money from was doing time lapses with it as well, because it can do a time lapse function where it can control the shutter on the camera and move the camera with the gimbal, so that you can put it on like a slider and stuff, and do, you know, like on BBC Planet Earth and stuff, where they do like a time lapse of a planet. Yeah. You can do all stuff like that with it. So I have seen a monetary benefit to doing it, but the main one is how much lighter it is and how you can fit it into more places, because it disassembles a bit more and there's more places you can stick it in, and also the battery's a bit better and smaller, which I like.
Yeah, and to be honest with you, that's the only way, in my opinion, of justifying it. If you believe that it's actually going to improve what you do to the point where it can actually gain you more money because it's offering something what you currently don't have. But again, for me, for a gimbal, to get gimbal shots, if I shoot real estate, or if I want something, if I want that smooth gimbal shot, the one that I've got, I'm going to keep it until it dies. I've even though I'd probably not recommend it, I've had the FX6 on it, and I balanced the FX6 on it. Yeah. Stripped it completely down, just its body and just the screen on the top, but it worked, and I managed to do it, and it was fully functional, and everything was good with it. I don't think it's recommended, but yeah, I think it's good sometimes that we kind of slow down our desires and our wants to buy new equipment, because it's just it'll end up costing you more than it needs to, because you got to ask yourself, do I really need it?
Yeah.
I saw there's another YouTuber out there as well called Luke Forsyth. He's great. He's a documentary filmmaker, and he was talking about how a lot of high-end documentaries are still shot on an FS7, which is probably 10 years old now.
Well, it's crazy. I think these days, compared to when we started a couple of years ago, the barrier to entry is so much lower now than what it used to be. There's stuff that you need to buy just to get by. Like, say for example, like even gimbals. You go on Facebook Marketplace, you can get a gimbal for like 50 quid. It's so much more affordable to go out there and buy like good quality lenses and good quality camera bodies and stuff, even if you want to do it secondhand or through somewhere like eBay or places like that. And you've got social media where you can just get on and you can just message people. And obviously that's a double-edged sword, because the industry is a bit more saturated now than it used to be. But it's the barrier to entry with like imagine back in the day if we'd have had access to a camera like the FX30 and that was your starting camera. You got 10-bit log footage that you can use. You got time code. You can stick it on a gimbal. It's tiny. It's got cinema features. You can put loads of lenses on it, APS-C lenses that are quite affordable. You can pick them up quite cheap. It's got so many features that we didn't have where we were using like the 750D or the 80D, things like that.
Yeah, and you're right. And another thing as well, where not a lot of people, but some people can turn their nose up on an APS-C Super 35 sensor is crazy, because most of the films that they probably watch are shot on Super 35.
Which is the same crop.
Yeah, the FS7 Mark II, I still think that one was a Super 35 sensor. So if you compare that camera to, say, an FX30, the FX30, there's a lot of features on the FX30 what it doesn't have, what you can probably pick up on an FS7, but you've still got the XLR imports. You've still got the Super 35 sensor. It produces colours better with Sony's new colour science compared to what it was back then. That's why the FX30 is like I don't know what it is in Canadian dollars, but over here it's like £1,500. It's probably about similar $16 in US. For the price that you're paying for what you can go out and shoot is tremendous.
That's brilliant. And the audio, say for example, like an audio device like the Tascam DR10L, like that's such a workhorse of a microphone. That's all. I think that's one thing where people, when they're just getting into this stuff, they don't really dedicate a lot of resources. They'll buy a good camera and a good lens and a gimbal and do all that stuff and get a drone and stuff, but they always neglect the audio side of things. And I think the audio side of things should be at least 50% as important as the video side of things, because people aren't going to put up with bad audio. So I think it's something that people need to invest a bit more in.
I absolutely agree. I think now, yes, I think it probably is more saturated, more people are getting into video production, but I also think there's become more avenues within video production. Somebody could be a documentarian, and to me that's a very different way of shooting to somebody who's shooting it for social media. A lot of where they might, certain celebrities, for example, might have their own videographer following them around. They're not necessarily looking for that beautiful shot. They're not necessarily looking for what narrative could be created. They're just looking to capture the content, to run after them, to film them getting an argument with somebody else. Technically it can look pretty naff, but because of the content, it's doing well.
Well, exactly. Like I'll give you an example of this from this week. I turned up to a real estate shoot that I was supposed to be doing. It was more of it wasn't like shooting the properties itself. It was more about the local community and stuff. So we turned up to this shoot, and I turned up with like lights and a gimbal and tripods and 2 camera setup and audio devices. I had 2 audio devices on and stuff, and I walked into the cafe that we were supposed to be shooting at, and she said the first thing she said to me when I sat down was, I was thinking we could just do this on a phone. And I brought so much stuff in.
You know what as well? It's funny because now with the quality of a lot of cameras on phones, that people, I mean, there is in some ways, even though I hate to say it, depending on what content that you're trying to shoot, times the mobile phones, but it's got log now on the iPhones. You can grade it better than what you used to be able to. Yeah, it is. It's, but it's that quick turnaround. It's like, it's just capturing that moment, and then from your phone you can directly upload it to social media, and it's there then. where there's a few more steps to the process when you doing it, filming it with a camera. Again, I like what we said before about horses for courses. There's certainly a place, a massive place for that kind of videography with social media in mind. But for me personally, my goals and ambitions are to shoot differently than that. I'd like to, as I'm doing currently, work more in documentary, and then move on into narrative-based productions as well. That's where my heart lies, and that's what I want to do really.
Well, I think certain platforms call for it as well. Like I've heard from a lot of social media analysts that I've worked with that TikTok is particularly good for authenticity content. So if you do film stuff on a phone and you do present it in that way, it will do better on TikTok because it promotes more authentic content. And I've heard Instagram is the opposite. You'll do better if you use a professional cinema camera and you do like a full log grade on it and stuff. But I've been told a lot of the time, like, just leave the camera home. We'll just shoot, which is a bit disheartening when you've spent so much money on all this stuff and you turn up and someone's like, let's just use the phone.
I agree with what you're saying, and yeah, there's obviously there's a massive difference in shooting documentary, shooting for social media, but also not just shooting for social media, about knowing the algorithms of what TikTok might want versus what Instagram might want. It's it's a minefield trying to keep up with the algorithms to try and get your business out there so people are aware of who you are. And
then you got to I think what I've heard from a few people that I've worked with, because I've hired some people to work for me for social media management, and I've also worked with some social media managers on like producing content for third parties. What a lot of them do say is you need to pick your platform that you're going to post to, and the one that you want to learn the most about, and then you redistribute content between the other ones. So say an example of this would be my main platform for making money with wedding videos would be Instagram. So I'll purpose content towards Instagram, and then I'll distribute on YouTube, and I'll distribute on TikTok and on Facebook. But my main focus is learning the algorithm for Instagram and doing things the way Instagram wants to do them. And then just if they do well on other platforms, they do well. And then obviously you'll get to a certain point where you grow enough to hire someone like a VA or a marketing specialist who could come on and help you with other platforms. But for me, for weddings and stuff, the main meat of the money is on Instagram. If you want those higher budget couples and stuff, because you can do well on Facebook, but it's more of a low budget market. So for me, it's not worth investing in that market.
I still find no matter what, between it's Instagram or LinkedIn or Facebook or whatever it might be, my number one is always been word of mouth and recommendations.
Oh yeah.
When I'm doing the corporate side of things, it's been people I've worked with. Obviously, conversations happen. Somebody will want somebody who can do some degree of video production, so they'll say, "Oh, get David in." I know David. Do you know anyone who does that? Yeah. Contact such and such, and it's me. And then, through word of mouth and through developing good relationships and good working patterns with people and making sure that you price yourself affordably and honestly. That has been by far the number one way where people have approached me to work with them on different projects.
Exactly, and I think going the extra mile for people and helping them out and being honest with them. Where a lot of the times I'll say to people, like when they're looking at my packages or they're looking at certain things, they'll ask me, "Do you think I need that?" And I will be honest with them. I'll say, "No, maybe this wouldn't work for you, or it's not like high. It wouldn't be high on your priorities based on what you've told me." Whereas other people are more likely to upsell on everything, you know what I mean? And I think there's short-term gain to that, but I think in the long run you're better off being honest with people and getting reoccurring business.
I agree, and I think honesty is always the best policy, and I think it's on the same side of it as well. I had somebody just yesterday approach me to do a corporate video for them, and I presume this person doesn't know much about video production, which is fine. I don't expect them to, but they put in it. I think this will take 2 to 3 hours. They put in that. They put the time, duration, expectations of the shoot. And when I read through what they want, I put when I replied to them that I think this is more likely a day.
Yeah.
By the time you get set up, by the time you do multiple takes, it was in multiple different locations. You get from location to locations to repeat it. There's other factors what might creep up, what you don't even know about till the day. Some of it was outdoor shoots, so with it being exterior, there could be weather issues. And And I'm realistic. They probably wanted to, yeah, don't worry about it. I can get it done in 2-3 hours. But realistically, it would be rushed, which means the final product won't be as good. Or it could be completely off, where 2-3 hours in, we're still in the first location before we moved on. And then they start thinking, like, why would we not pre-warn that this is a much more lengthier shoot?
Yeah.
I do think when a lot of clients put I believe it's going to take 2-3 hours or 3 to 4 hours, whatever they say, I believe that's to dictate the price.
I do as well, yeah.
As
They're
to
trying to
say,
get costs down. It'll only take a couple of hours of your time.
Yeah, exactly. And I think they think that you're going to look at that and you're going to price according to what they've said, meaning it can't cost that much because they're only going to have you for 2 or 3 hours, and what's that going to cost them, you know? But yeah, I think again, now I've not necessarily got that job, I don't know. But if they're speaking to other people, it just depends. Somebody else could come in and say, yeah, absolutely, I can do it in 2-3 hours. And maybe they can, I don't know. But and they might get the job, but it doesn't necessarily mean they're going to get the better end product.
Exactly. It's the same as like saying to someone, I need to rewire my house, and then you get one person and you're like, we want it done in like 2 hours, and someone else who's a professional who knows how long it'll take to do the job properly says, no, I don't know how long it'd take to rewire a house, but someone says, say, a week, and you're like, well, that's way too much, and then you get the guy in for 2 hours, but then you're constantly repairing your house every other week because everything he's done isn't right. It's the same thing if you're not investing properly in the marketing and you're not doing it the right way and making sure that everything's done thoroughly. Say a good example would be, I always say to my clients when we're out and we're shooting, we could shoot this or we could shoot that because we've got the time to do it, and we can repurpose that content in the future, and it's not going to cost you as much because all you have to do is pay me for the editing. You have to pay me to come out and shoot everything again and get all the cameras set up and travel fees and all that stuff. All you have to do is repurpose content, so you've saved in the long run and you've got more content over a longer period. So you just got to have some kind of foresight when you're booking a videographer or a video production company.
I totally agree. On that note, what have you got? Have you got anything planned for this week? What are you working on?
So I've got 2 things to edit today. I've got a wedding film to have done by the end of the day, and I've got a property video which was in West Vancouver to finish. And then tomorrow, I'm shooting commercial lets in Metrotown and Gastown, which Metrotown's towards a place called New Westminster, which is towards Surrey, which is the fastest growing city in Canada, and then Gastown is the other way towards Vancouver. So we're going to get some cool shots of the mountains in the background over there. There's still a bit of snow on the mountains now, I can see, but it's definitely receded with the warming weather. So we're going to do a bit of that. And
that sounds good. And Surrey as well, another place named after good old English place.
Yeah, I think the Surrey over in the UK is bigger than the Surrey here.
Really? That's surprising because obviously the UK is tiny compared to Canada.
But don't forget, Canada has about half the population of the UK. So like, do
you know what? I didn't actually know that.
You did?
I didn't actually know that. No, I didn't. I didn't know that. I genuinely didn't know. I know it was quite densely populated over here in the UK, but Canada being so big. But yeah, maybe this just thought. Yeah, maybe it makes sense. Maybe there's just a lot of land there what's not inhabited. It seems like you're pushing the property style video and things like that. That's good.
It's so big over here. It's a massive industry, and the I'd say compared to what I've seen, my experience with property videos and stuff in the UK is a lot more limited than it is out here. But it seems like the industry is a lot more developed out here, and there's a lot more that goes into it. It's a lot more about the realtor themselves than it is about the actual real estate. Whereas I found in the UK it was more about filming properties and the letting agent. Whereas over here it's about your individual realtor who's like sold your nan's house, who sold your mum's house, and now he's going to sell your house, like all that kind of thing.
Yeah, that's interesting. Actually, I'm currently working with an estate agent, a realtor, as you'd say, on your side of the pond, and it's been different because they don't want the traditional like house tour kind of video. They want again what kind of feeds into what you were saying before about social media. They want the beauty shots. They want, nice flowing shots of rooms. They don't want to show every single room. They want things that will perform well on socials. Yeah. It's just the videos are there as an enticement to get people interested. So then they'll get interested in the brand, the company, and then potentially the property, but the photography will show them the property. Initially, I admit, it took me a second thought to get my head around it, because when I've worked with previous people, they want tours of the property, everything from they want realistic colours, so they want it to look like it does in reality. Where now with this new company, they want different kind of colour grades on it. They want it to look different. They want it to have different colour schemes. They want it to be beauty shots, really.
Yeah.
The other thing that they want, what I know is increasingly popular at the moment, is speed ramped, where you speed ramp it, then it slows down for a bit, then you speed ramp it again. That kind of thing as well. But it's different. So I'm working on that, and what I did today and other things is I'm currently working on one documentary, but I've started to speak to different people about my second documentary, what will be ongoing, which will be my third documentary overall. So alongside what I do with corporate and commercial, that's something that, and I want to get you involved in it as well, but I won't talk about it right now.
That's for a future episode.
Yeah, and that's really interesting subject matters and topics, and it's things that I'm passionate about. So it's something that I'm genuinely interested in, which is not to say I'm not interested in real estate, but this is just, again, it's a little bit different.
Yeah, it's more your passion project, isn't it?
Yeah, it's about subject matters and topics that I'm passionate about more than just on a working level.
Yeah.
So I think, there's other opportunities as well, and what I want to get you involved in on the documentary side of things, because I believe that there is avenues where it can fit in nicely against what you do in your corporate work, your weddings, your real estate. It can sit nicely alongside that. So the money, you always make sure that the money's coming in, but the other thing can open potentially other doors and bigger doors as it progresses.
Yeah, to where you find your voice as an artist, I'd say.
Yeah, if you want to, if you will, and it just changes as you start to film, and it's brilliant. Right, on that note, Tom, it's been good to catch up, and let's resume this next week.
Yeah, I'll see you next week, David. It's been nice to chat.
Nice chat. Another episode with the camera guys.